Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to be doing an unboxing of this very giant cardboard box that you can see in front of us here. And you can notice also we've got this massive like sun plume coming through the window. This is a staple of winter unboxings, and when the sun is lowest in the sky during the winter and autumn months, you do get this like giant kind of sun beam across the table here. And so we have now entered the months of having these very sunny unboxings. This will probably go on until March of next year, but without further ado, we have this giant box. So this is probably one of the largest boxes I've ever had from AMS. This box of course is from the aircraft model store, so a massive shout out to them. I do also have some other Gemini Jets models that I need to unbox, but I've left them out of this unboxing just because this is a giant unboxing anyway. In this unboxing we are going to be unboxing 7 NG models. So we're not going to have any Gemini Jets models in this unboxing, but as I just said, we do have some other Gemini Jets models that we do need to unbox. So without further ado, I think that's all I've got to say. So we're going to move this box off to the side, and then we're going to get these models out one by one. So as usual, I'm going to take the boxes out of the larger cardboard box. We're going to put them off to the side and then open them in detail one at a time. So starting off today, we have another retro or classic model. I don't go for many of these, but I just go for a few that I really like the look of. So we have another Boeing 747 SP. We have the United Sol Bass livery 747 SP. We also recently had the Battleship Grey 747 SP being released from NG Models. I didn't go for that one because I'm not a fan of the Battleship Grey livery. I think that the Sol Bass livery along with the Stars and Bars livery are United's two best liveries. I would then say that the Battleship Grey and the Continental livery are kind of down at the bottom, and then the Evo Blue is kind of somewhere in the middle. It's not an amazing livery, but it's not bad either. But yeah, this model is going to be joining my two other 747 SPs, my Pan Am 747 SP and my Qantas 747 SP. And so yeah, I'm really excited to unbox this model. This is actually my first Sol Bass model, which is crazy to think about, but there we go. So moving that off to the side here, we can now go for the next model, which is the NG Models Scandinavian or SAS A350-900. Now for those of you who know my collection, I do already have an SAS A350. I have the Phoenix version of the SAS A350, and I don't really like the Phoenix mold of the A350, so as NG Models releases some of the models that I've already got from Phoenix, I'm hoping to replace some of them. The Phoenix mold, it's not drastically bad, but it's just, you know, with a lot of these models I would rather just get a really nice version over just kind of coping with the Phoenix version. So I got this one to kind of replace my Phoenix model, but I don't want to get rid of my Phoenix SAS A350. So we will just now have two SAS A350s in the collection. A bit like my Lufthansa A330s, I now have the NG Models and the Gemini Jets Lufthansa A330. But yeah, I'm really excited to open this model because I love the NG mold of the A350. It's really nice, and of course they have corrected the landing gear issue that we had with a few of the first edition NG A350s. But apart from that, we're going to put this one off to the side as well, and we're going to go ahead and get out the next model. And the next three models are all 787-9, starting with probably the least exciting because this is quite a bland livery. We have the NG Models Japan Airlines or JAL 787-9. I don't need this model for any updates, but I think like JAL is a kind of a gap in my collection. I've always thought if I got the chance I would go for a JAL aircraft, so I went for this one. It's a nice one. I believe JAL along with ANA are some of the primary operators of the 787, so I went for this one. Of course it is kind of a Euro white livery apart from the logo on the tail and the Japan Airlines titles. It's just a white aircraft, but I thought I might as well go for this one. Next up on the list, moving that one off to the side, we next have the Air New Zealand 787-9. Air New Zealand is an airline that I've loved for a very long time, but I haven't had a new livery Air New Zealand aircraft ever. I've only ever had the old livery Air New Zealand 747-400, which of course I still do have. So this is going to act as a great addition to the collection, of course, going alongside that old 747-400 in the old Air New Zealand livery. The other aircraft I would love to get from Air New Zealand is an all-black livery aircraft. Of course, if you don't know, Air New Zealand, they have some of their aircraft in this livery where it's primarily white and a little bit black at the end of the aircraft there, but they have some of their aircraft in what they call an all-black livery, which is this livery but inverted. So everywhere that you see is white on this aircraft, it would then be black, and everywhere that's black would then be white. So I really want to get one of them. I might try and get, now that it's retiring, maybe a 777-300. Those are now being retired, but it is still an amazing aircraft, so I may try and find an all-black livery Air New Zealand 777-300. But we're jumping the gun a bit with that 777, so let's have a look at this one first. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead now and reveal the next 787. And the next 787 is probably the best looking one out of all the 787s we've shown today. We have the brand new Hawaiian 787. This is a brand new aircraft into Hawaiian's fleet. They don't fly these yet on passenger service. They do have one currently, I believe, that's flown into Honolulu, but it's not, as I say, in operational use at the moment. But yeah, this is a really cool aircraft. I love the Hawaiian livery. I also have another Hawaiian aircraft on order as well, so we will now have 3 Hawaiian aircraft if you include my existing A330. So yeah, my Hawaiian fleet, although I don't need any Hawaiian aircraft, I just love the livery. Who doesn't love the Hawaiian Airlines livery? So I decided to go for this one. And so next, moving on to the narrowbody aircraft, here we have the Boeing 757-200 in the old Iceland Air livery. This is the livery Iceland Air used through the 80s and 90s, and so I'm really excited to add this to the collection. Of course, I do have a pretty large Iceland Air fleet. There are a few more aircraft I do want to get. Of course, I want to get the 767 and I want to get the 737 MAX 9. I don't believe the MAX 9 has been released by anybody yet, so I really want to get that and the 767, but now we have this retro 757-200. And apart from that, we have the final model for this unboxing. We have the NG models Copa Airlines 737-800. Now, NG Models released 3 of these. They released a splits, a non-splits, and a special livery. I didn't go for the special livery because I only really deem special liveries worth getting if you like the look of them and if they come to your airport kind of frequently. I'm getting this Copa 737 for Dulles, and they only really fly one daily flight into Dulles. So, you know, it's very rare to see the special livery arrive into Dulles, so I didn't bother with a special livery. The non-splits version I already have from Gemini Jets. Gemini Jets released that back in, I want to say 2016, and I bought that then. So now we have this splits version of the Copa 737-800. But apart from that, we can put this one off to the side and we can go ahead and properly unbox all of these models. So starting off today with the Copa 737-800. Copa operate an entirely Boeing 737 fleet. They did very recently operate as well the Embraer 190. However, that was retired during the pandemic in 2020, and now they just operate the 737s. The 737-800, which is the one you see here, is of course their primary aircraft. They operate 62 of the 737-800s, but they also have orders for the 737 MAX 8, the 737 MAX 9, and the 737 MAX 10. Currently, they only have the 737 MAX 9 in service. They have 13 of those in service, but they also have, of course, orders for the MAX 8 and the MAX 10. The 737 MAX 8, 9, and 10 will eventually replace the 737-800s in the Copa fleet, but that won't be for a while yet. We've still got a good few more years of 737-800 service. And as I said, these do fly into Dulles. Of course, they're based from Panama City in Panama, and so they fly from Panama City up to Washington Dulles on a daily basis. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and open this model now. Taking this out of the box, the very tiny NG Models 737 box here. We have the plastic cradle here, and inside we have the model with the plastic protection on the top. And so taking a closer look at this model now, you can see starting off at the nose of the aircraft here, this is the nose that NG improved upon. Originally the forward landing gear was a little bit too long, but NG models improved that with later iterations of the 737, and now we have the perfect 737 nose. The Copa Airlines livery looks a lot like the United Continental livery, as you can probably see. It shares a lot of similarities with, of course, the white fuselage, the grey underbelly, of course being Star Alliance as well, that doesn't help. We've got the Copa Airlines titles in blue there. Moving to the middle of the aircraft now with the wings and the engines, we have the blue top scimitars and then the grey bottom scimitars there. You can see the emergency exits on the wings as well, looks very good. And then moving to the rear of the aircraft where we have the tail, and taking a look at that tail, you can see the other very similar feature to the Continental livery. We have something that looks a lot like the Continental globe, but apparently it's not. However, it is still a pretty cool livery nevertheless, and yeah, I can't wait to add this into my collection. And next up we have the old Iceland Air livery 757-200. This livery looks really cool. It looks very wintry with the white and blue, of course, on the aircraft, but without further ado, I think I'm gonna go ahead now and open this box. Of course, this being a 757, you can see that we've got the polystyrene there, but taking the plastic off the top of the aircraft there and taking the aircraft out of the cradle, if I can wiggle that out slowly, we have the model. If I can get that nose out, there we go. And taking a closer look at this aircraft, I really like this livery. I think I like it so much that I'm tempted to say that I prefer this over the new Iceland Air livery. It looks really nice with this kind of singular blue stripe stretching down the middle of the aircraft, and of course we've got these black Iceland Air titles here as well. It's almost like a Euro white livery, but it's a Euro white livery that works. Sometimes you don't need a ton of color on the aircraft, and sometimes it just works really well, but then again, sometimes it doesn't in the case of Lufthansa. I personally don't like the Lufthansa livery just because it's quite simple. And while this one is also simple, I think the white and the blue kind of works for Iceland Air. Iceland's a snowy place. It does snow there quite a lot, especially during the winter, of course, and it works. Then moving to the middle of the aircraft here, now I believe these are still the Rolls-Royce engines, the same ones used on the 747s, the RB211s. I believe that's the case. They do look like them, but I could still be wrong. I apologize if I am, but there we go. We then have the wings, of course the wings without the winglets. This livery was used in the 1990s, so of course I don't believe there were any 757s with winglets during the 1990s. And then finally here, moving to the rear of the aircraft, here we have the registration, of course, the Iceland flag, Boeing 757 there, the rear door, and then of course the tail with that. Still the same Iceland Air kind of livery or logo there, it's just in different colors. Overall, this is a very nice aircraft. Iceland Air flew this aircraft, as I said, during the 1990s, along with both the 727 and the 737 as well. But here's the question that I need to put to you guys in the comments. Does this belong in my European cabinet with my Iceland Air aircraft, or does this belong in my classic cabinet with my classic and retro aircraft? That's the query you guys have to answer in the comments, but apart from that, let's move on to the next aircraft. And next up here, moving on to the 787s, and now while I am doing these from the 737 down to the 747, I decided that for the 787s I would do them in reverse order, starting from probably the least exciting, the Japan Airlines one, and finishing with the Hawaiian 787. Looking back on it, I don't know why I got this model. Of course, JAL don't fly to the DC area, so I won't really be using this in any updates. I also don't really think this livery looks necessarily good. I mean, it doesn't look bad, it's just a bit of a boring livery. So while it does diversify my collection a little bit, I don't really know why I got this. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and open this model, I guess. Okay, so no bottom tray on the 787. I can't remember if that was the case before or that's changed, but there's no bottom tray. We have the plastic sheet on top of the polystyrene, and then inside here we have the model. You can see that this livery is definitely not complicated. It's very simple. As you can see, the wings, the engine, the fuselage is all white. Even the Japan Airlines title, it's just in black, so it's literally a black and white livery until you get to the tail. I would comment on something about the livery, but as you can see, there just isn't really anything to comment upon until you get to the tail, where you can see we've got this JAL logo on the back here. We have the registration, we have the UNICEF titles at the back there, and then on the wings you can see we've got the Japanese registration here, which is JA863J with the Japanese red dots. So that's really cool, but apart from that, honestly, this livery is just very, very simple. So yeah, it's a pretty cool aircraft, I guess, but it's just quite a bland one. So with that, I think we're going to move on to the next 787, which is a bit more of an exciting 787. And with that, we can kind of move back into the shade a little bit with this Air New Zealand 787. Of course, the Air New Zealand, it's a bit like the Japanese Airlines livery in the sense that it is just black and white. However, this one has a lot more going on. This isn't a boring livery and it has some really cool features. So with that being said, let's go ahead now and open this model. One pretty cool feature is Air New Zealand were in fact the launch customer of the 787-9. They currently have 14 of these in their fleet, and they also have orders for the 787-10 as well. As I said, they do also have the 777-200 and the 777-300. However, the 777-300 is sadly going to be retired from the Air New Zealand fleet. Air New Zealand fly this aircraft to many destinations such as Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Chicago, Melbourne and Taipei, and also one other destination is Adelaide. If you remember back to when I used to do my Adelaide airport updates, it was during that time that I was doing those Adelaide airport updates when Air New Zealand announced that they would be stopping service to Adelaide on the Airbus A320 family and starting service on the 787-9 instead. Air New Zealand fly the 787 to many high demand destinations in Australia, although they're not that far away. So for example, they fly this aircraft, as I said, to Melbourne and Sydney, and of course now Adelaide as well. I would expect that because of the coronavirus that maybe Air New Zealand would have resorted back to using the A320 on the Adelaide route, but I remember really wanting an Air New Zealand 787 for those Adelaide updates, so this is kind of a bittersweet moment. Of course, I didn't really get this for any airport updates. This is just going to look really good in my collection, as I said, next to my old Air New Zealand 747, and I do really want to get an all black livery aircraft as well. Of course, the front of the aircraft is very white, the wings, the engines, and the front of the fuselage is white. We've got the Air New Zealand titles here in black. We've also got the Star Alliance logo there. But then where this livery really starts to get interesting is the rear of the aircraft. New Zealand have a lot of symbolism to do with this fern. In fact, there's a referendum, I believe a few years ago. At the moment, of course, the New Zealand flag has the Union Jack, as of course New Zealand was originally a British colony. And there was a referendum a while back about New Zealand getting a new flag, and I believe one of the top votes for New Zealand's new flag had this fern in the flag, and it looks pretty cool, to be fair. Although I am British, I totally support New Zealand getting a new flag. It makes sense. I mean, a lot of the countries that have the Union Jack on them, it doesn't really make sense anymore. I mean, Hawaii has the Union Jack on their flag as well, which in current times just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But in the end, New Zealand had a referendum, and it turns out that the people voted to keep the Union Jack on their flag. But we still have that New Zealand fern in a lot of New Zealand symbolism, so of course we have it on the Air New Zealand livery here. We then of course have the classic Air New Zealand logo here, which is this, I don't even know what this is supposed to be, but it shares a lot of resemblance with the Iceland Air livery. I know it's not the same, but it's kind of got that same feel about it. So that looks pretty cool. And as I say, I do really want to get an all blacks aircraft, whether that be a 787, the NG release, or a 777. I'm just going to have to see what's released in the future. But overall, it's a really cool aircraft. I do also want to get a Qantas 787 as well. There's actually quite a few Qantas aircraft I want to get. I want to get a Qantas 787, I want to get a Qantas 747, and I want to get a Qantas A380 as well. I know Gemini Jets did just release the Qantas 787, but I'm probably going to wait for NG to release one just because I like to have kind of consistency through my molds. I like to have the same mold through a lot of my aircraft. So I'm probably just going to wait for NG to release a Qantas 787. But apart from that, we're going to move on to the last 787 of this unboxing, and that of course is the Hawaiian Airlines Boeing 787-9. This box looks amazing. I love the pink and the purple and the orange that Hawaiian use. It just kind of shows a really tropical kind of color scheme, and it just suits Hawaii. NG do go above and beyond with their boxes, but of course the box is just such a tiny part about the model. The main thing is of course the model itself. So we're going to go ahead now and open this box to reveal the model inside. Okay, so this 787 does come with a bottom plastic tray, so I'm a bit confused why that JAL 787 didn't come with one. But apart from that, we can go ahead now and get out this amazingly beautiful Hawaiian Airlines 787-9. I mean, just look at this aircraft. This is absolutely beautiful. I mean, I've got the A330, but this Hawaiian livery just doesn't get old. I also have another Hawaiian aircraft on the way that I talked about at the start. That is the Gemini Jets Hawaiian A321neo, the re-release. I'm pretty excited to get that as well. And as I say, I don't need these Hawaiian aircraft for any airport in particular. I just really love the Hawaiian livery, so I just really wanted to get them. Hawaiian have 10 orders for these 787s, and as I say, these aren't in passenger service as of yet. What's pretty amazing about the Hawaiian 787 is, for me, living in England, Hawaii just seems so far away, and Hawaiian don't even come to Europe or anywhere close to this. In fact, the closest destination Hawaiian fly to me is Boston, and Boston is still a 7-hour flight away, so it's pretty crazy to think about. But what's pretty crazy is Hawaiian ordered these 787s at Farnborough, which is literally 30 minutes from where I live. So it's pretty amazing to see this airline kind of operating the other side of the globe order these aircraft literally half an hour from my house. So it's a weird thing to think about, that these aircraft, or hopefully these aircraft, start flying to Europe. That's a real fingers crossed moment, because I doubt they ever will. But yeah, I just found that pretty amazing that this airline that operates the other side of the world ordered these aircraft half an hour from my house. So it's pretty cool to see. Now, I'm a little bit confused about this aircraft, and if any of you have kind of information about the 787, let me know. I don't know whether this is going to be operating some of the A330 routes like New York, Boston, Sydney, Tokyo, those kind of routes. Or this is going to be opening up some new long-haul destinations. As I say, I would love to see Hawaiian come to London. That would be absolutely amazing. And I know that the 787, I believe, can just about get from London to Hawaii. Although that route may not be feasible, I would love to see that happen, and you can count me as one of the first people to be on that flight, because I really want to go to Hawaii. But apart from that, let's go ahead and get stuck in detail on this model. Okay, so taking a look at this model now, at the front here you can see we've got the cockpit nose here, we've got the Boeing 787-9 titles there, the Hawaiian titles in purple there with the new font. Moving to the middle of the aircraft, of course we've got white wings and white engines, but we have this lei pattern here. Of course, leis are the floral necklaces. It looks really cool in that grey livery, and of course that is a new feature to the new Hawaiian livery. And then finally, moving to the rear of the aircraft, I'm going to have to adjust the camera here, but we have the registration here with the American flag, we have the Dreamliner titles there, and then we have of course the amazing Hawaiian tail, which looks absolutely amazing with the purples, the pinks, the oranges. It just looks absolutely amazing. And just like that, that concludes this model. So we are now going to move on to our second to last aircraft, which is the Scandinavian or SAS A350-900. This is an amazing aircraft. This has been flying into Dallas a lot lately. Of course, originally the A350 was due to fly from Copenhagen to Beijing, and then of course during that brief period before the pandemic, where COVID was just a Chinese outbreak and it wasn't a global outbreak yet, Scandinavian actually stopped flying to Beijing because of the coronavirus, and because they didn't have the A350 flying to Beijing, they started flying the A350 to Washington Dulles instead of the A330 for those few months before the pandemic, when it wasn't announced as a global pandemic and everything shut down. After the pandemic, Scandinavian started to fly the A330 back to Dallas, but then they started to fly the A350 back to Dallas again, and as of now the A350 is on a regular schedule to Washington Dallas. Of course, the box here is a pretty simple design. We've just got this kind of blue fading into white and then grey, and then we have parts of the Scandinavian flags. Of course, we have Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Those are the 3 Scandinavian countries that Scandinavian Airlines serves. Of course, the A350s, I believe, are primarily based from Copenhagen. That's where they do most of their flying. But apart from that, let's go ahead and bring this model out of the box. And so taking the plastic off the top there and wriggling out the model from the polystyrene here, we have the model. Scandinavian currently operates 6 of these A350s. They have 6 of these in operational use, and they have another 2 A350s on order. As I said, they do fly to Washington, Dallas, and Beijing, but they also fly to many other destinations such as Shanghai and Chicago, just to name a few. This is painted in Scandinavian's new livery. Of course, this new livery has been painted onto other Scandinavian aircraft like the A320, A321, and CRJ 900s. I would love to see this livery start to be painted onto the A330s. I think that would be really cool. The A350 is a replacement for mainly the A340-300s, which are now retired from the Scandinavian fleet, but also partially the A330s as well. Taking a look at this aircraft now, one of the interesting features is it's not a white fuselage. It's an almost like a creamy or grey color to the fuselage here. And then of course we have the SAS titles, the giant SAS titles in a very dark grey there. Moving to the middle of the aircraft, we have, now this is probably one of the features I don't like about the new livery is we don't have those red engines. If they had this new livery but just with the red/orange engines, I think it would look so much better than what it does now. But of course we just have grey engines with like a blue ring around the front of the engines there. Moving to the winglets, we have blue winglets with SAS written on the inside of the winglets. And then moving to the rear of the aircraft now, we have the Wi-Fi box there. We have those flags again, well, the bottom of the flags anyway, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, the registration, and then the SAS titles on the tail with that blue. Overall, this model is an amazing model. It definitely beats the Phoenix version of this aircraft. But apart from that, I can't wait to add this into Washington Dallas updates. And so yeah, we're going to now put this off to the side and move on to the last aircraft of the unboxing. And so finishing off where we started, we have the United Sol Bass livery 747 SP. It's a very nice box. Of course, we've got the United logo in the back when it had the orange in the logo as well. And then down here we have the orange, red and blue stripes down the bottom there as well. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and open this model. And just like that, here we go. United operated these 747 SPs for 10 years from 1985 to 1995. They bought them from Pan Am, or they were given from Pan Am after Pan Am went bankrupt. They operated 11 of these, as I said, from 1985 to 1995. And so they had them in 2 of the United liveries, the Sol Bass livery and the Battleship Grey livery. Those are the 2 liveries that stretched from 1985 to 1995. And yeah, these are absolutely amazing aircraft. I think the 747 SP is just an absolutely amazing aircraft, and NG absolutely nailed the mold. This is going to look so good next to my Qantas and Pan Am 747 SPs. I need to actually check the registration whether this is actually the same 747 as my Pan Am 747. I'll do that later, of course, but without further ado, let's go through this model in detail. So starting off at the front here, of course, the front I believe is the same proportion as the 747-200. It's just the rear of the aircraft that's kind of shortened. So we have, of course, the stripes down here stretching across the middle of the aircraft. The orange, the red and the blue, they look really, really good together. Like, those colors just add such a real retro feel to the livery. It looks so cool. And then of course we have the United titles up here with the United logo. Apart from those 2 features, the fuselage is kind of a white fuselage. So moving to the middle of the aircraft, we have the engines and the wings. Of course, the engines are those classic 747 engines. They look really good. And then of course at the end of the wings, we don't have the winglets, but we have those kind of those almost like pylons, I guess, at the end. The sticky out bits is the unprofessional term there. And then moving to the rear of the aircraft, we have the tail with that giant United title. So apart from that, as I say, this aircraft is going to look so good in my classic cabinet along with my Pan Am 747 and my Qantas 747 and as well some of the L1011s that I've got as well. Of course, I've got the Gulf Air L1011 and I have another L1011 on the way as well, so you guys can expect that in an unboxing coming soon. But apart from that, that concludes today's unboxing. So yeah, overall an absolutely great unboxing today. All of these models are absolutely flawless in molds and everything. I love them. The molds are just incredible. NG do such a good job and none of them have come broken. NG are really improving. That's the thing I love most about NG models, is that they just improve. Like for example, the 737s, the A350s with the landing gear, they had issues when those molds first came out, but they fixed them over time, and I think that's the best thing, the best quality you can have in a company. As well as that, all of the liveries and everything, these models look amazing. Just the Hawaiian livery, the United livery, those two probably look the best, but the Air New Zealand, the Scandinavian, the Iceland Air, they just look absolutely amazing. These are going to make absolute great additions to my collection. And apart from that, I want to thank you for watching today's video. Apart from that, I want to thank you very much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.